Welcome to the recording of the Iconic Bond intro / master class. This is an overview video of the iconic bonding process and a tour of the icon elements. And with me today, and the co-creator of the Iconic Bond, Jacqueline Robinson, and I are going to spend some time with you today, taking you through this kind of bird's eye view. Jacqueline, do you want to give us just a little bit of your background, kind of how you got here and what this process has meant to you and all of that?
Yes. Welcome, everyone. I would say the material in the Iconic Bond and the birthing of it actually, for me, has elements of all pieces of my life and how I got here. And as Michelle and I started looking at these icons and really diving deeper into them, which continues to happen every time we sit with them, they expand and deepen even more. I was able to lay experiences of my life, especially when it comes to relationship, over these icons. So my background and how I got here, I am 28 plus years married. And my husband, George, and I, we have essentially in the last year pretty much broke down all parts of what that marriage was, because we were functioning in a marriage paradigm that was very much about equality, very much about really trying to reach the goal of what life is supposed to look like once you meet each other and have the children and build the house and continue to advance and advance and advance and just build. And we found that that was not sustainable for us. So a lot of my work comes through my life experience. What has happened with George and I in our marriage has greatly informed the Iconic Bond and really everything I do, and even now for George. I am a mom of 3, and being a mother, being deeply present with that feminine role in my life is also where a lot of my experience comes from. Probably about 15 years ago, I started studying mysticism. I studied mediumship. I then expanded into several areas of spirituality, psychic energy, working in the higher realms. Healing is what it was for me at the time, and I was a body worker. All of these pieces I'm speaking about really have culminated so beautifully in the work that Michelle and I are creating and the Iconic Bond. I love what we are building. I see it now everywhere. It's incredibly unique. And for me, it really feels like so much of my life has been about getting me here to birth and create this. And so I'll leave my story there, because there will always be pieces interwoven in the work that Michelle and I do, because my relationship is the foundation, really, in many ways, of what I create. So thanks, Michelle.
For myself, I, by degree, am a nurse and bachelor's prepared nurse, and I have multiple other credentials through the allopathic medical frame. And I am as long in healthcare as I was married, longer actually now. And I was married for 28 years, in relationship for 30. And after the same amount of time, I too went through a proofing kind of situation in my marriage, where my decision was to not continue with that person. And for the same reasons that Jacqueline decided to stay, which was because George was her person, I decided to leave mine because he was not my person. He was the person for that period of my life and was not the person for the next period of my life. And I am a contributor to the iconic bond information in the sense that my expertise is understanding the human meat suit, how it works, how it energizes, how it charges, how it heals and creates well-being for itself based on environment and other factors that can be mitigated, exposure factors that are considered drains to the system, and how that impacts the bond to self in all four areas, the bond to others in all four areas, and have a unique perspective on that. The short story being that unless a person understands and tends to their primal human charge, they won't be able to bond adequately. And we're going to talk about that as I introduce you to the human icon. Jacqueline and I met, gosh, has it been a year ago? The beginning of
at least
20?
Yeah.
Right after everything shut down, we crossed paths, and having traveled similar paths in our previous lives, very parallel. Now we are in closer proximity on this timeline doing this work with the iconic bond, and very present for how the 5D energetics are coming through and the codes are coming through for how people and why people pair bond coming into after 2020. Now it's 2021. And the implications of that, what it means, why we do it, what the purpose is, and the depth and levels of creativity that can be had in this unique situation and opportunity to bond together. We're primarily talking about in the iconic bond, I'm going to say heteronormative sense. We will be using gendered terms, male and female, and the actual gender anatomy, male and female, for the purposes of this frame or this perspective. And that is also our experiences and how we live our lives. So that is an alignment that you'd want to take into consideration if you choose to engage with this material. So with that being said, and us having introduced ourselves, I'm going to advance to the next slide, and we will meet the icons, the overview of the icons and how they fit together. Do you want to do that, Jacqueline, or you want me to do that?
Sure. We began to sense that as you work with these icons, beginning, you can see on this slide here, beginning down at the bottom with the human. And we began to sense that as the human got charged, as the God opened, as the master activated, and the alien came online, all of these icons are essentially serving as a personal compass. And we'll get more into that compass really being calibrated toward you. As that happens, the beauty of the icons is that this isn't a program laid out and you follow XYZ. This is highly customized to your energy, your personal compass, your way of experiencing each icon. You can see here on this slide that we have in front of us that we've laid it out: the human, the God, goddess, the master, the alien. These are the four icons. It's laid out here specifically in ascending order. It begins with the human foundation. You move into the God, goddess energetics, which we will talk about. you activate the master, and only then does the alien code the full 5D presence of your being really come online. And so what we're going to do as we go forward is we're going to do a brief overview of each one of these icons to give you a sense to begin sort of playing with these energetics on your own. And Michelle and I, in the next month or two at the most, we will have a full deep course available that will go into very deep, pure. We'll have a presentation just like this for each of the icons to really take you into them. And ultimately, once you've done that course, we will then have an offering that essentially lays you on the iconic grid energetically and allows you to very quickly sense where you are in the process. And I'll tell you, my husband George did this with Michelle when we were in some pretty murky waters about a month ago. And we had been working on things. And once Michelle laid him on the grid and said, okay, this is what you've got here, here, and here, and flipped those switches instantly, it was a game changer for George. We had already become aware of our bond, but him doing that process catapulted him. I mean, dissolved time, which is what these icons do, and we'll talk more about that, and just completely changed the nature of our relationship.
I'll just add to this and reiterate what Jacqueline has said. And you see over to the side, the Paragon portal, the 2 Ps, the iconic bond information is within the portal. And the diamonds are present because they're representative of the diamond, the Paragon Diamond. And I'll let Jacqueline talk about the Paragon Diamond for just a minute after I've said this. What we're alluding to here is that the iconic bond becomes the ionic bond at such a level that through tension and pressure and the right ingredients or circumstances, you literally become diamond. And the Paragon Diamond is the most iconic of the diamonds. And interestingly enough, the diamond is, in modern terms, in modern era, the symbol of marriage. It's one of the things that goes along with a marriage. It's now become an empty symbol of marriage because most relationships and marriages behind the diamond really do not have the substance that is of paragon quality. So a mentor of mine several years ago, in listening to her talk about relationships with other people who were desiring relationships, she said she would constantly say, what is the purpose of the relationship? And at the time, I wasn't too keen on that. I was like, well, because. No, she'd say it's not because. It has to have a purpose. And so it gave me actually really great comfort to look back at my 28 years married and go, oh, the purpose of that marriage or that relationship, even though it was not iconic, was to birth my 5 children. Very unique people on the planet. To help my ex in position himself in a way in his business that he might not have actually done without me. So I offered that unique perspective there. My purpose of that was to build us a beautiful, beautiful home where life was created there and beautiful meals and so many fabulous things happened. So that was the purpose of that. And now looking forward into the next half of my life, I no longer am able to produce children. So what would be the purpose of having an iconically bonded pair to bond with another person? And in essence, it's virtually the same thing. It's the grid for the complete fulfillment of my human, my anatomy as a human, my need for touch, my desire for companionship, all those things that fit with the human, in the species aspect, and then my Godesse having the human, the counterpart, the male counterpart to the God there with me, and the master, the other part of that wealth creation, the abundance creation, and then us together receiving or transmitting or working with whatever codes in the 5D realm are available to us as an iconically bonded pair. So it would not necessarily be for the same purposes that a younger person might bond, the creation of a home and children, like Jacqueline alluded to, and then I also did. It's a different kind of creation. It's a different kind of opportunity. And in a sense, it's as valuable as those earlier bonding opportunities. It still has this magnificent creative potential and purpose. So still valid if that person is iconic in themselves and desiring another icon to bond with. Jacqueline, do you have anything you want to add? I wanted you to speak to the Paragon Diamond and then anything you want to add about that.
Yeah, what I would want to add about that right in this moment, being where I am with George, I'm nearly 50, George is nearly 60. Our children are in their mid to late 20s. That iteration, that expression of our relationship essentially is over. Having the children, building a home, being in the family space, that's done. So to Michele's point, there is, I would say for where I sit, there is as high voltage and intense of a frequency in our bond now, which is very different. But laying that against the birthing of children and the building of a home, what we are doing now is birthing, literally birthing, an entirely new way of being in relationship, just with ourselves, never mind the work that I'm doing out here with Michele and in other places, just George and I with ourselves. There is, I would say, for the time that we were in, the voltage is even higher. We closed the chapter on what we had. We are creating brand new. A piece of the iconic bond that is naturally woven in by the nature of who Michele and I are, and by the nature of clients we're already seeing, is that there's a depth of maturity in it that is woven through and spoken through what we are sharing here. This is built upon, between the two of us, over 60 years of experience in life, in relationship, in parenting, in creating business, in spiritual growth and development. For me, that has so many fibers of richness, which then leads me to speak about the Paragon Diamond. As we began developing this was probably maybe even 3 months ago. Michele and I were just starting to kind of get our toes in. Okay, we have these icons. At the time, they were called avatars. What do they want to do? And we really sat back and kind of let them talk to us and channel through us. And they're still doing it, I can tell you. It's mind-blowing. And the diamond came in pretty quickly, and I don't remember how we got to the diamond, but the diamond came in and Michele started talking about how is a diamond form. It's an ionic process. And we were really, the heat was turned up. Like if you're in the alchemization of the creation of a diamond, we were in it then, and the iconic bond is built upon that. Paragon as we began to work with it, that word popped for both of us, just the word. And then we began exploring the meaning of it. And we came upon Paragon is the ultimate symbol of virtue, number one. Number two, so if you think of, I'm going to stay with number one. If you think of the virtue, not virtue as in goodness, virtue number one as in the purity, the clean energy, and virtue number two as in the highest quality. That's the paragon. We also came across the Paragon Diamond. The Paragon Diamond has the 4 C's, which anybody who's bought a diamond knows about the 4 C's: color, clarity, cut, and carat weight. The Paragon Diamond is known, there is actually a diamond that is considered to be the Paragon Diamond, and it is incredibly large. Like, I can't remember, Michelle, I don't know if you remember the carat weight, but
something carats.
How many?
70 something carats.
Large, like very large and crystal clear. And so Paragon Portal is the entrance point to the highest quality, the diamond quality of relationship, of marriage, a diamond marriage, which, as Michelle said,
oh, we got that 137.8 carats. Holy shit.
I was thinking it was over 100, but I was like, nah, don't exaggerate. That might not be right. Over 100. Fascinating, as we suddenly just opened the portal, literally, the Paragon portal, pieces dropped in front of us, and we were consistently mind blown as this began to come together. So the diamond is present as the Paragon Diamond marriage. The diamond is also present, and you'll see we've included it in today's summary. Those 4 C's, those 4 elements, color, cut, clarity, and carat, align with these 4 icons. I love personally when that happens, and I find that to be added potency in the alchemization that underlies the entirety of these icons and this process.
I like what you brought up, Jacqueline, about our maturity. Most things, information that you find about dating or marriage or whatever, it's kind of oriented toward the younger, it feels like the younger crowd, like the people who are just on the cusp of creating their I'm going to say first marriage, because even Esther Perel says there are usually at least 3 marriages within a union. If it lasts, there's 3 marriages within it. And so the maturity that we're using in this process, it's universal. It can be used with any, you're not going to feel like, oh, well, I'm too old or whatever. And I know, like, there's no age limit for bonding. There's no cutoff point for saying, oh, well, I won't be able to do that. I've hit this point in my life. It's over. In fact, if you add 137.8 the carats and a paragon together and you get a single digit, or you get a number, it's 10. Which is in the Huna system, it's the architect. And so if you drop the 0, 1 is God. So either way, you're looking at a very potent example of the image of the Paragon Diamond. And so it's really profound on a lot of levels. Okay, well, I'm feeling complete with this, and we can move on if you're cool. Okay, great. All right, so meeting the icons, as we said, it's the process of bonding 2 iconic people who are bonded to themselves, creating a pair bond that means the iconic in every sense of the word. So we're taking all 4 of these qualities and forging the Paragon Diamond self and relationship or pair bond. So you are your own, they are their own, and together you are this great creation of diamond. It's like Dr. Bruce Lipton talks about in his work, where there are gases who are complete and they come together to form a noble gas. So they are no longer their own individual types of expressions of chemistry, and they come together and they become this gas that is no longer recognizable to its previous form of gas. That's in essence kind of what we're talking about. We're using the diamond illustration. And this is really something extraordinary. It's not common. It's incredibly strong. It's inseparable and alchemical. So in a diamond, you do not get to have back the carbon. You do not get to have back in its original form what processed through the tension and the pressure to become the diamond. And the circumstances under which that happened determine what kind of diamond you get. And we all know in the diamond industry, you've got industrial diamonds that are used to cut and to grind and to do these things. And then you've got Paragon quality diamonds. You've got these examples of very pure and rare form. And that's what we're talking about here. It's not trash diamonds. We're talking about the good stuff. So you got a really clear idea of what the alchemical process that we're talking about, what you're seeking to form in this process within yourself individually, and then with another by coming together. And I think something that's really kind of extraordinary, what Jacqueline has mentioned, is even though she and George did not necessarily individually were iconic and maybe bonded on all four levels when they first got together, what ushered in the second part was their alchemical, iconic selves coming together to form this iconic bond in the second half of their relationship. She is the example of where the choice she made initially is still the choice she makes now, which is fantastic. And then I am the example of making a different choice later and being iconically and alchemically bonded within myself first. And my requirement is to have that in my pair bond as well. So
And
go ahead.
well, I just would add to that point that you made. The beauty of my experience, your experience, is that there's a high frequency to the iconic bond. It's not for everyone. However, if you're called to this and you know you're iconic, there's no way that it's not for you.
Right. Exactly. Because
So, yeah, go ahead.
that's the thing is like, so some of the people that are drawn toward the iconic work are master creators. They are forces of nature. They are, what are some words? Incredibly potent.
And they're on the edge of consciousness. What they are doing in their own realm or world is not the common normal thing. They're pushing the edges. They're finding a new way of doing who they are, what they're called to. It may be the same profession, the same thing, but it goes through a crucible, a portal, an alchemical process, a forging, and becomes an entirely different expression, even if on the outside, on the surface, it looks like George and I were in the same marriage. We know we are not. We are not in the same marriage. We have alchemized, iconically bonded, and now there's a code by which our marriage is functioning that didn't exist previously.
The thing I like about this is that if there was a union created, and it's created where one of the points is not fully empowered and activated and charged, it's going to create an impurity. It's going to create a flaw. It's not going to be iconic. And there's a a lot of people, I think people who do not, they want nothing less than iconic, they'd rather be alone. There's
Yes.
no in between. It's iconic or nothing. So when you see dating and relationship experts who are talking about, well, you know, you're really not that special. You're really just you really just need to kind of get off your high horse and just understand that there's no perfect. This isn't about perfect. This isn't about perfect. And you can be flawless, and it can be flawless. Not that there aren't issues. It's just that there's no flaw in the bond.
Right. That's it exactly.
That's a
big difference.
Yeah.
A big difference. If you think of that Paragon Diamond, it's flawless. That's the bond. The bond itself is flawless. You still have humans in the bond. You still have movements that happen. It doesn't mean you have reached a certain level of performance, of checking the boxes.
Yeah, no.
That's nothing of what this is about. And part of, as you were speaking, Michelle, part of what sets this apart, it came through for me, is a lot of the relationship programs and teachers are also teaching that there's a broad blanket by which, if you just follow this, it's kind of like it's tagged for everybody.
Yeah.
The iconic bond is not, number one, not tagged for everybody. And number two, no being who is iconic and no bond that is iconic will look like any other one. There are no two diamonds that look the same, even if they're flawless.
Right. And like we said, each relationship is like its own cut.
Yeah.
Each diamond requires that it be cut in a certain way to enhance its beauty. And this is what we're talking about, is that's the uniqueness of each one. It's what makes it iconic, is the cut for that specific diamond. So all really good metaphorical kind of points to help people understand that this may not be for you, and it's okay. It's fine. This is about the alchemical bonding process. So 4 bonding points at which the couple become bonded, and you also become bonded to yourself so that you can bond to another. So bonding to self first, and then your surfaces or your points of bonding are ready for the other. So this creates a grid or a compass to, I think I've got that covered up, to guide the bonding process. Excuse me, I'm gonna have to plug in. I didn't realize I hadn't done that. I thought I'd done that a minute ago. So there are qualities and characteristics unique to each icon, and how they activate, the order in which they activate, and how they interrelate. It's really important. There's an order, it's algebra kind of. There's an order of operations in a sense. It's almost like the diamond forming process. There's elements that are present, processes that happen, the environment does this, and then this thing becomes. So the purpose of the icon activations is to create timelessness. Diamonds are timeless. They don't
get stale. They don't age.
They don't use a lot of the natural timeline laws. Using this grid and portal, we're bending and playing with timelines and collapsing time all together. So we're using the entry points to the system in all of the quantum mechanical ways. People find that really hard to believe, that if you honor and understand and work within each of these iconic places, that the strength and power and the clarity and all of those things that come through are mind-blowing. I think Jacqueline will attest to that. Even George has noticed, is like, wow, you're really on. You're really in a new way. So this is, you can see it in people that you've had a relationship with when they make this shift, and you're like, huh, they're processing differently. The things that happen to them blow right through them. Things don't matter as much anymore. They don't, whatever. It's just different. And what seemed not only impossible, but hasn't yet come into this present reality and existence on any level, suddenly becomes crystallized, clear, and potent now. So you're like, whew. So it literally comes in, crystallizes, forms, and then boom. And the diamond is living and breathing at the same time, fixed, steadfast, and solid in its bond. So it has these interdimensional qualities that are kind of phenomenal.
And to that point, the last point, what not only seemed impossible and bending timelines. Again, because we're sort of, I think a hawk just flew right by, because we're sort of looking at how iconic bonding is different than relationship coaching.
Yes.
What happens when the iconic bond activates in that realm of timelines collapsing? When George laid on that grid, energetically laid on the grid with Michale, that morning, I had had a conversation with a coach we had been working with who said, you know, it took you 4 years, took me 10 years. You have to allow him time. And I felt incredibly frustrated and said, I don't buy that. There's something else here. Unbeknownst to me, George spends some time with Michale in the afternoon. She very quickly can assess where he is with these icons, gives him what she sees. And to my point, he immediately flips. That's the collapsing of time. It didn't take 4 years. It didn't take 10 years. And I also want to add in, when we speak about what seemed impossible, what seemed not only impossible, but hasn't come into reality, you can't see it. We as humans imagine that, oh, well, wouldn't it be incredible if the impossible happened? What happens in the iconic bond is far beyond the impossible. Mm-hmm. We are programmed to imagine the impossible. If it's going to happen, it's going to be like this, yeah, and you're going to be blown away. In the iconic bond, it's as big as that, but it has the most, gosh, it's almost like you're just going through life, and the unimagined, the unknown, the beyond belief happens. But because you are charged, activated, opened, you're not leaving your body. You're not leaving this reality and going into something that's fantasy and cannot sustain for it to exist and be created. It's here in everyday life.
Yeah, you now have the capacity to hold the experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And even receive the experience. So totally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. The 4 icons are presented as bonding surfaces. We talked about that, connection points, bonding potential, if you want to be scientific, has the qualities and characteristics of the ability to seek out a similar, acceptable, not just acceptable, but ideal bond in another, so that it's potent rather than weak. And so the following are the premises under which they operate, with a set point and purpose. So alchemy happens in a certain way. There are certain melting points of certain substances. So everything, this is where it gets customized to you, is you have a set point, you have a melting point. You have different physical qualities in physics that are unique to you based on your human charge, where you are in your God or goddess awareness, how much you're in your master and how much your alien is able to find you, basically, is what we're talking about. And so all of these qualities are present, and they operate in different ways in different people. The iconic bond remains integrous through all space and time, past, present, and future, and the activation is now. So what we're talking about here in the various elements, we're gonna orient you in space and time, lifetimes, cosmoses, into the stardust that you are in the present, that everybody can see and touch. We're going to bring all that together, and this is what helps collapse time. Your bonded love is already here, so prepare the surface and alchemize your bond. Jacqueline, do you want to speak to that just briefly there about your bonded love is already here?
Yeah. For anybody who's drawn into this portal, the truth for you is there is an iconic bond already in existence. You're not looking for it. You're not trying to create it. When George and I alchemized our bond, it wasn't the day we got married. It wasn't when we had children. It wasn't when we bought our first house or when he got the next job. It was within the last 2 months after basically broke down everything that had been, got to the bare bones, and there was a choice point of I choose you.
Mm-hmm.
And that is deep into the heart. It exists in the energy field. It is a knowing that you can't get away from. You can't separate from that. The bond stands the test of everything. The heat, the cold, the pressure, the tension, everything. The bond holds, even when it feels like it's not there. Anybody watching us last year would have been like, they're not going to make it. It's not going to happen. But the process we went through, in truth, in hindsight, was the alchemy to create and alchemize, to forge the bond. That bond existed all this time. We just did not have, right? It's been there the whole time. It's why I said yes to marry him. It's why he wanted to marry me in the beginning.
Yeah.
But the bond could not activate until our 3 surfaces were prepared and the ionic process could take place.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, I'm going to talk about the human. Everybody has a meat suit. If you're walking around on the planet, you've got a meat suit with bone and muscle and fluid, and you have cells, and you have tissue, you have heart, brain, and they are full of energetic potential, mitochondria. They are full of voltage creating potential. Voltage is the energy that runs through the body. It can be measured. It's like taking a voltage meter and sticking it in a Gauss meter or whatever, and sticking it in an outlet and seeing if you've got 120 or 220 power. It's the same thing. And it's primordial. This is the in theory what was created from the Big Bang and rose from the ooze and transferred from one state to another at the African Rift. And now we became bipeds, and we roam the earth, and we procreate, and we make stuff, and we're human species. So this is the human. And a lot of people are just not even aware of what comprises the human. So we think that the human is this bag of bones that we're carrying around, and we take it to the doctor every now and then, and sometimes it gets sick and it makes babies and it goes and does work. Well, really, it's so much more than that. It comprises so much. It comprises your history, your lifetimes, your genetics, your heritage, all the things that have brought you to this point, including in the astrological sense, where the location of your birth took place, the time which your birth took place, the histories of the people who brought the seed and the egg together to create you in that Big Bang moment. All of those things combine to form who you are and how you're expressed. And the acknowledgement of the human, the basic acknowledgement, these are like fundamental things that we agree on in each of these icons. We'll call that the basic acknowledgement, is that civilization of the human is taking its toll on the DNA. So we just acknowledge that the human is comprised of all of these histories and timelines and genetics and expressions of all of those things called epigenetics, and what makes us into the walking, talking being that we are. And that we have to acknowledge that the domestication and civilization of the human in the modern era is taking its toll on how we express. The epigenetics are not adapting as quickly as the environment is changing. So it creates a lot of dis-ease and a lot of maladaptive type syndromic presentations. We see it in our children. We see it in how their bone is shaped. I work with infants and children a lot in craniofacial growth and development and airway formation, which turns into a postural piece that we address. How children are born today is very different than the way the human was born 200 years ago, 300 years ago. The way that the human is shaped now after the industrial era and revolution is different than it was in its indigenous environment. So all of these things must be acknowledged when you start looking at the way the human is showing up in the world. The impingement and encroachment of the environment and the vast changes that have happened in just the last 150 years, the advent of readily available electricity. Now we're talking about radio frequency changing from the advent of the radio has just been around 100 years. And so now we've gone from radio, FM, AM to now we've got gigahertz of frequency running around in the atmosphere. It's a huge, huge maladaptive event that's occurred. It's an event it's an epigenetic event that's occurred, and maladaptive processes have a chance to expose themselves. So we see things like electrical hypersensitivity syndrome, and how people create a human expression that is not boding well in those environments that are high frequency in the low frequency or electric range and the radio frequency range. So now we've got a human system that is not responding well to the environment. And the way that we deal with that, I don't like to use the word fix. So the way that we deal with that is to return to the basic fundamental needs of the human operating system that natural law determines gives the human success. And that determines our success of the human activation. So in the long course, we're going to dive into what those areas are, how you identify them, how do you mitigate modern, civilized, domesticated environment on the human. And then as those things are addressed, you begin to literally reverse time, turn the clock back, add voltage to the system, slow the aging process, and create stores of energy that allow you to bond. You've got to have power to bond. It doesn't happen in a vacuum. There's energetic potential, kinetic potential, all of these energetic potentials that are present in the raw materials of the diamond, also with the human. because the human is basically a battery. We are blockchainers, if you will, borrowing the Bitcoin analogy, of the sun. And we have energetic capacity to store various spectrums of light. It's our job. We're plants with complicated emotions, so to speak. And we can eliminate the complicated emotions if we have enough light stored. We talk about that in the long course too, when we talk about the human. So the key to human charge is how we manage those civilized, domesticated impingements, I call them drains, on the human, and create a net gain so that we always have a charged full battery. If the human is not charged, it creates natural compensation and also decompensation. And that will show up as emotional distortions, disease, we call them diseases in the allopathic system, and a general collapse of frame and connective tissue. So we'll have autoimmune issues, we'll have connective tissue breakdown, so our skin ages quicker. We have an incline of posture, a collapse, a top to bottom compression of the spinal column. The spinal column will lose space. And so we have all of these allopathic names of diseases and disease processes that we attach to these various deactivated or compensatory human expressions of the low charge human. And we'll talk about those in the expanded course. Some things you'll see, I'll give you a couple in each field. So emotional distortions might be anxiety disorder. I can't tell you the number of children I can take and say, okay, we're going to change this child's environment, and symptoms of anxiety, ADHD, ADD will go away, and they become more organized, more sensory balanced, and able to sleep. Those things will happen. And so it's a direct correlation to charge. Dis-ease would be just about anything that you could name that's in the ICD-10 code in medicine would be a dis-ease. And most of those, unless they're attached to syndromic genetic expression, like a Down syndrome or any other kind of what's going to show up as syndromic expression, can be reversed by charging the human and dealing with the environmental mitigations. General collapse of the frame, anything dealing with your bones, your spine, like I said, autoimmune issues, wrinkles, postural issues, scoliosis, kyphotic changes, the dowager's hump, compression of the spinal column, anything like that is a general collapse of the frame and connective tissue, which you might have seen in indigenous populations, but not to the extent that we see it in domestication. Jacqueline, did that seem pretty clear? Did that come across?
Yes.
Crystal?
Very.
Love it. Okay.
Crystal clear.
All of these affect the other icons, and this is how to recover the human, is focus on the basics of the environment. And so in the long course, we're going to talk about the basics of the environment, how you engage with that as a human. And in the activation, so this is the flip point, so to speak. This is when things get nitty gritty with, do you want to activate this human to its full potential or not? Is to match the human to the location and environment where they charge the best. So, for example, I live on Maui right now. I was born in the Gulf South on the water. So my natural dispensation or predisposition to the need for water, salt, sun, sand, and all of those things is part of who I am. It's a non-negotiable for me. I'm not gonna be able to bond without my body in an environment like this. This is my expression of the codes that I require for bonding. Now, is that for everyone? Yes and no. We'll talk about it in the long course. Some people are going to require, some people might have to charge in one environment and then they're able to live in another that actually serves and suits them better, depending on multiple factors that we'll talk about later. So it's where you heal and charge and are able to maintain that charge with flawless, effortless precision is what we're talking about. This is your activation flip point. Yes, Jacqueline.
Well, and you said flawless, effortless precision. That is in the foundation of this process of iconic bonding. There's the flawless. The flawless isn't the human is perfect, does everything perfect. Mm-hmm. The flawless is once you're charged, it becomes effortless and it is flawless to your compass and signature.
Yes.
And
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I like to use the word self-perpetuating. So there's a flawlessness has this eternality to it. It's a self-perpetuating glow in a sense. What were you going to say?
On another note, what I was going to say with regard to this activation, match the human to the location and environment where they charge best. And to you speaking about being on Maui, and that if you were not near sun, sand, and water, you would not be able to bond. Our bond happened, activated, because George and I came south. Water for him was important. Sun and warmth for me were important. Sun for both of us in the human icon. But in terms of what we needed, we were starting to depress in the north. Compress in the north when it got cold, when it got darker, when we couldn't just be outside. Our bond did not activate there. Mm-hmm. It activated when we got charged in the right environment. This is such a massive point to preparation to bond.
And I just want to add that the private work that Jacqueline and George did with me on where to determine that they needed to be was a one-to-one process. So in the one-to-one work that Jacqueline and I do, you'll be taken through the process of what is your specific environment. And I can pretty much lay that out for you. That's part of my genius. That's part of my alien. Is I can pull that through of where it needs to be and how to get you there. And people are like, well, I can't go live on Maui or whatever. Nobody's saying that you have to. And the whole story of how I got to Maui is one of those impossible stories. It's my story. It's my story. And it does. And does it mean that I'll always be on Maui? No, it doesn't mean that. And what we talk about in the master is some people need to live in multiple places, and you go into creating the wealth, mostly receiving the wealth that it takes to be able to create that kind of life, to be able to serve your humans. So you see this intimate, that's where the bond within gets very intimate, is it moves through the three icons and how they flow and fuse together so that they're no longer distinct but alchemized into that diamond bond. So the human icon activated is the sunlight is imperative. And I talk about that in the long course, how to do it, what it means. I answered a message from one of my clients, my medical clients this morning about sunlight. She's living in an area, and once she learned how to hack sunlight and what she needed to do to get that, she's like, oh my God, I get it. My mind is not right without it. And I'm like, you're right. Your mind is not right without it, and neither are a lot of other things. Food, it's based on location and heritage. So it's the short course on what and how to eat, and how it doesn't really matter in some senses once you get into the right environment. That sleep is based on tight circadian rhythms. We'll discuss that in the long course, how to manage that, how to create that. I made the comment in a live this morning, I slept last night like I was dead. And that's like that's my gift to the world, is that I can sleep for 9 hours straight. It's like, I'm 55 and I can sleep for 9 hours. I can go for 9 hours. You can't. And so how you sleep is like a litmus test, and it's a hallmark to how you're going to do everything in your life. Literally. It's that important. There is movement to create space in the body. So how we move creates space and capacity. There's an activation in how we move. And we've moved so far off of north with our movement that it creates compression and depression in the human form. The last part of it is the experiences. So experiences, healthy pair bonding, and community. So the ability to healthily, knowingly, iconically bond is it's a feeding up through the process. So pair bonding, and then it feeds the human by pair bonding. So this is that part of that Taurus sustainable model of that healthy experience in your bonding becomes part of your human icon. So for people who are unhealthily bonded, as in my case, that bond, that other bond, which was an iconic bond, had to be broken in order for my human to be iconic. It had to be. It was too much of a drain. It was not where I was supposed to be. So decisions like that, while they're not made lightly, at least they're being made for the purpose of this other thing. It's a conscious choice. And I'll talk further about that later. So that's basically how the human icon is activated, the short story. So Jacqueline, I'm going to let you lead with the goddess.
Goddess icon. This is home base for me. And a lot of the work I've done previously has been focused on the energetics of the goddess. First of all, we talked about the human being primordial. The god, I'm just going to call it the god. We all know it's goddess. The god icon is ancient and pulsing within the heart as Eros. So by ancient, and I go into that a little further down here, every one of us carries the God within. It's the ancient mystical aspect of self that has existed through all of time. The realm of function is mystical law. The God energy exists both within and without. And it's very natural for us as beings. We actually are created in a way that we are continually seeking intimacy, connection with that pulse of life. It's its own life force that comes in and feeds the system and brings you alive. Its center of focus is the heart space. The energy it brings through, we call Eros. Eros in the iconic bond is a deep, abiding, eternal love that is there no matter what, whether you can feel it or you can't. And so when I spoke about George and I, the bond being there was something that even though we couldn't feel it, still was alive and pulsing between us in the heart space. The ancient element of that is that Eros and the pure, like crystallized, high diamond, paragon, pure frequency of what we know as love has always existed. Our compass is always turning toward that and reaching for it. It's very innate within us. It's been here since the beginning of time, and it will last through all of time, whether we are streaming it through our system, or, as we'll learn more while I talk about this, or the heart is protected and we can't feel it. the basic acknowledgement of the God goddess is there has been an expression of God through all of humanity. Through all of time, humans have deified something, imprinting a unique signature with that expression. What I mean by that is because this energetic is present within our system, whether we acknowledge it, whether we practice with it, whether we open to it or not, by its very existence, we are going to seek the energy that has divine potential within it, that we can not only connect to and in a sort of way bow in reverence to, but that fills us with a whole different expression and frequency of life, fills us and answers our desire to give devotion. In the feminine, she's continually seeking a place to put her devotion. In the masculine, he's designed to receive that, and it brings more of his masculinity out of him. In the absence of a bonded partner, that devotion still needs a place to go. And we cover that again in the longer course pretty deeply. We give you more about that devotion and how to allow it to come through you, whether you're partnered or not. That need, masculine, feminine, that need to connect to devotion is eternal. It exists within us. I'm ready for the next slide, Michelle.
You can do it. I made you co-host. See if you can.
Okay, let me see if I can. I cannot. No.
Okay.
Okay. This is another piece that comes into the God and Goddess, which is, for many of us, Michelle and I both do, but for anyone who has a background in religion, there's a knowing that there is the God and there can be a false God. Because the heart is the center point, is the origination of Eros and of God energy. If the heart is in any way covered over, collapsed, protected, shut down, there will be a tendency to give that devotion to a false God, which brings in fantasy, illusion, delusion, which is kind of the impotent energy of the mystic. They are under delusion of what it is to be connected to God, what it is to love God. So whether believing in and bowing to what many call the one true God, and I put that in quotes that way because that can be in any religion or not in religion, what you experience as God force energy. So whether believing in and bowing to that God by any name, or I guess I kind of was redundant there. There's a continual hunger, search, longing to feel, sense, experience the bond with the God energy. That is always alive.
Jacqueline, can I ask a question here?
Yes.
So there is, in the, I'm going to call it the 3D paradigm, or the religious historical view, that there is good and evil. I'm going to use the word light grid, that's a light grid kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. And now my belief and understanding is that we're pretty much off the light grid now. We're in a different dimensionality of space and time, where the light grid is off, it's dead, it's turned off. And now I think the when something feels, and I feel like I've crossed over into that, this new consciousness, as you say, we talk about being on the edge of consciousness, and I feel like I'm definitely crossed over into a different dimension of consciousness now. And I love, first of all, I love what you say, and I meant to say this earlier, is that this is not your mother's matrimony, is what you say. I just feel like that's such a great tagline, because this is not your mother's matrimony. This is not light grid medieval marriage where they're seeking property, identification of children, distribution of wealth, to know who your heirs are and things like that. This isn't that. This is new consciousness, not your mother's matrimony. So this is new consciousness matrimony is what we're talking about, right?
Yes.
And when in this world, it's like Star Trek, right? And now we're out here, the new frontier of consciousness and matrimony. When you encounter other people talking about joining and partnering and bonding or marrying or whatever in certain ways, I've encountered some lately where something just feels off. It feels off. And sometimes I'm not even to really fully express it. That's almost become the new, what's a different word for evil? It's not it's not even light grid evil. It's flawed.
It's flawed, and it has a corruption to it.
Thank you. That's what, okay. There you go.
It's like when we have talked about the God energy, it's kind of where that virus lives that can come in and corrupt the purity.
Yes. Yeah, that's it. So as someone else has already said, the virus in the woman is she doesn't trust her body. And I believe the virus in the man or the masculine is that he doesn't know KNOW. He doesn't know. He's running a virus. It's a corruption in the system. So really in the human, what we're going to talk about in the icon is that she gets in touch with her knower, the trust of her own body. And then men learn this as well. And then in the knowing, in the master, this is a coming on of that knowing and that able to sense the corrupt codes and the corrupt virus that's coming in that distorts the bond. Does that sound okay?
Absolutely. And the corruption, which I think we'll have a little bit more about this as we continue talking about the God icon, can impact the compass.
Yes.
So the compass no longer reads a true north, but it's starting to be a little bit off and moving towards what is magnetized, what seems true, what seems desirable. And part of why these icons are built the way that they are, that the human gets charged first, is you can't sense that little shift in the compass if you're not charged, because there's so many other things going on in the system. It all seems interrelated. Once you get charged, the very next thing that wants to come online in our being is that heart. Okay, I'm charged. I want the bond. However, I'm a little protected. I'm not really sure. I've got old stuff in here. I'm not sure if I can open this again because of what happened before.
Well, that's my experience. That was my experience. You had your experience in the human, and I had my experience in the God, in the God. And so my human fully charged. Even my master was like, yeah.
Online.
And then my piece was the heart opening, as we say, broken open, staying open in the God Goddess was my final piece. And that happened in relationship to the heart opening. So here I am living in the heart chakra of the world, Maui, and I'm having this heartbroken open experience facilitated by another human. And I'm like, oh, I get it. Oh, there it is. And then also, interestingly enough, that same human brings me the concept of true north and magnetic north. You cannot navigate by magnetic north and expect to get where you need to go. You're going to get lost, literally. And in Maui, it's 12 degrees off. So you 12 degrees off in your navigation system, and you're in the trajectory of that, you can end up millions of miles apart.
Yes.
Way off course.
Yes.
And so that's where that came from, is my broken open heart experience and realizing, oh, wow, it's only 12 degrees. And if you keep going, look how far you end up off course if you're not speaking your true north. And that lives in the God.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Totally.
And it can be confused, again, going back to why the primal charge matters. We talked about emotional distortion. If the primal is not activated, there's an emotional distortion of energy. When you come into the God and experience or recognize that you have experienced the heart broken, staying open or collapsing,
Mm-hmm.
when you begin to navigate the staying open, in, I would say, every experience I've seen,
Mm-hmm.
there's grief that has been woven throughout the heart space. And it in your case, there was grief about the current experience. However, that grief was also threaded throughout your history,
Right.
and touched experiences in the past. And if you're not charged, you can't navigate that
Right.
grief.
It will.
You have no idea.
It will stop you from being able to have any bonding potential. Whereas if
Absolutely.
you're charged in the human, it creates more potential for bonding. It's a big difference.
Because it's it's a huge difference, just like that magnetic and true north. Because if you aren't able to navigate through the grief, understanding it is part of the breaking open, you are consumed by it. It owns you. You can't you're upside down, and you can't flip into the open heart where that eternal essence of Eros, of pure love, and I'm not talking love and romance and he gets me flowers, love that activates a bond, love that is timeless. And in my case, my distortions in the God icon were all woven around, which is really what began you and I pursuing this. We started talking about the fantasy. And for me, the quote fantasy at first was the obvious thing. It's going to look like this, and he's going to be like this, and George isn't that right now. Partly because we weren't charged.
Right.
And then I unraveled all those fantasies. And finally, before the bond activated, and I knew, because this is my genius, I can see where it lives in the body, and I could sense it was right in the back where many say sort of that pre-human programming exists, right in the back of the neck.
The hindbrain. Yeah.
Yes.
Hindbrain. Yeah.
I could see that I was pulling out the final piece, which went all the way back to the week we got married.
Wow.
The week we got married, 28 and a half years ago. My system, because of an experience back there, took on a distorted belief because my heart was broken. I closed my heart, and the distorted belief grew into a fantasy about what, quote, love, the bond, was going to look like. As long as my heart stayed protective of even that little seeming shred of experience, I wasn't going to be prepared for the bond.
I love
That had to come out before my surface was ready. So the God energy is very much about clearing the illusions, the distortions, the virus, the false God. And I want to say something about the false God for those who may watch. I know there are many women, and I imagine men, but because I've worked extensively with women, there are many women who have had what some teachers out there are calling the twin flame experience. They've had an experience of a man who comes into their world, and often he's in the world of spirituality, he's highly spiritual. She connects with him. She automatically feels that's it. That's it. Except it's almost templated. It's consistent in almost every case. His heart, although it seems initially magnanimous and open and connected to her and like he knows her, his heart actually is completely shut down and disconnected. It's a surface connection. It's not deep in the full opening of Eros, and she's shattered. What he served as is one, a false God, but she made him God, and that's part of the shattering. And two, he's the human who came into her world to represent God, break her open so she could release the grief, the held on to pain and distortion, become purified, and begin to bond with the true God essence energy.
And in the long class, you'll teach us how to do that. You'll go into that whole process. Okay, great. All right.
I will, and it will also delve into the God is unique in the icons, and that there are 3 expressions of God energy in the masculine and the feminine.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so talk to us about the icon deactivated.
Yes. Okay, so icon deactivated, as I said, collapse of and barrier protection around the heart. Because of that, there's a disconnect. There's not a life force presence, and that's disconnected from self and others in those deep levels. I spoke about the attachment to projection of false persona, fantasy, false God, illusion. There's a depression, which means energetically different than in the human where it's compression. The depression in the God is there's a density. You feel the gravity of everything. Sometimes people who are massively empathic, it's because they're disconnected from themselves, so they're processing everybody else's stuff unconsciously. And light grid addiction, which is because the mystical energy lives in the God, there's a constant reaching to, I want to feel that in the upper realms. And it's an inability to come down into the body and be even in the darkness ready. So the activation for the God, as we spoke about, is the heart pierced and broken open by pure and divine love. It feels like grief. It feels like abandonment. It feels like rejection. In fact, it is love. And it may come in, for some, there's an experience, I would say probably for all, there has been an experience of the abandonment and the rejection. Sometimes that is the breaking open. Sometimes the breaking open, really, as in my case, is the bonded partner, that person who is steady in front of you, and their love does not waver. The collapse into self, shielding the heart. When this happens, when the activation happens, there are 2 options: collapse into self and shield the heart, because the heart has been broken open. There's no way around it. So either you gather those shattered pieces and collapse in and protect, or you open that tenderness that is pulsing and really, literally painful. Michelle, I think you went to bed for probably at least a week, if not 2.
Yeah, close to 2 weeks.
Close to 2 weeks. It's intense because there's an alchemy happening, and the choice point is, are you going to collapse or open?
Yeah.
And as we talked about, there must be a shift from magnetic north to true north. And we will cover more detail of that in the long course. So the God icon activated, there is a mystical level, meaning it's not just human. It's not simple and easy to talk about. It is mystical level, which moves everything in your being with the longing for, or the God self and other, depending where you are in that movement. And it also creates an ability to stay fully present, even when tenderness comes, with the heart open and deepen into the vulnerability of pure, mystical level love.
Jacqueline, before we go to the master icon, the thing I really love about this model is that I come from a medical background and deal with a lot of trauma, different types of trauma. And the trauma narrative, or what people call trauma informed, from the psychological world, all the Jungian interpretations, all of the frames of the psychological world. What I love about the human and the God is that within that, and you'll see it in the long course, and within that grid, oh my gosh.
I love when this happens over and over again.
Over and over. I have seen 100% of that whole narrative change.
Yes.
By addressing these two areas in these ways.
Yes.
Going to inactive to active. They're like, I don't have that anymore. I don't see it that way anymore. It's not that way anymore. And I'm just like, wow. And I see it with the doctors I work with too. Their spouse will be like, what did you do to them? What did you do to them? How did you, what the hell just happened here?
Yeah.
It was this shift, and it's impacting every part of their life. This is so potent. It's just like freaking unbelievable to me. It just really amazes me. And then we get to the master.
The master.
Because when you're bathed in love, when your love frequency is not about mush, and it's not about what it looks like, and it's the verb love. The master takes on a completely different tone.
Yes.
It's the commander, the master, takes on a completely different tone. So in the human, we've got natural law. In the God, we've got mystical law. And in the master, we've got energetic law. And when you're functioning in the realm of now in energetic law, shit's powerful, man.
Yeah.
It is, you're getting more to the point of no return, so to speak. That's when your alien is finally going to start saying, okay, maybe I can work with this, and you start getting those sightings and the hoverings and the codes start dropping in that we're going to talk about.
Downloads.
You're charged up in the human, when your heart is open and activated, and there's a verb love frequency about you, and you're in mystical law is governing that, and then your energetic law in the master comes on. It's just like written here, master's command, the codes and those things are wealth, money, speaking the truth, intuition, and both the power and integrity of the master's word and command. So literally you are speaking and creating consistently from that point.
Mm-hmm.
Which means effortlessly, flawlessly. The human has the capacity for it. The God is acknowledging the structure of the mystical and the eternal. and then the master is coming in and literally in the moment creating and speaking this truth and it's showing up in the energetics as wealth, abundance, money as a symptom, money as a symptom. Yeah. Anything that you want to say about that? We're kind of doing this one together.
No, I don't think I have anything to add yet. It really does just begin to flow.
Go ahead and do the basic acknowledgement of the master icon then, if you're ready.
Well, it's an interesting one, which is there is a desire to command and be commanded. And again, in each of these icons, there's a masculine expression and a feminine expression, perhaps less noticeable in the human. However, in the God and the master specifically, and especially, there's a feminine and a masculine expression. And in the master icon, the acknowledgement of the desire to command and be commanded brings in what we have practiced with as high masculine, high feminine, sort of that he's the master and she is, I don't really love the dom sub language. It's not that. However, he has a desire to command. He's designed that way. There's something in the feminine that she wants to be guided. She wants to be told what to do. And so when it comes into the bond, when he's leading, she's on point.
Yeah, she wants to be responsive.
Yes.
She's the responsive energetic in that bond formation. So the tendril for the ionic bond comes out and there's a responding piece to that. It's this. And yeah, it's the lock and key scenario. It's all of that. And I think for the coaches who have taken dom sub language and dom sub frames and made that the whole frame, it goes here. And it's not even dom sub, it's commanding, commanded. It's that the energetic of the masculine is offering, giving that energetic so that she has a place to respond to. And to place that devotion she developed in the God is to place that devotion into the commander in that way.
And a key piece in the master, and we've got it on this last line here, which is in that command there is truth, and the master is commanding that truth into the world. As the heart and the Eros are present in the God, in the master, the compass points to what is your truth. And when you are truly in your master energy, which exists here because truth is here, speaking the truth is here, commanding comes up and through the expression, sometimes the voice, not always, but here is the point of expression. So the master is about know your truth, live your truth, speak your truth, and command it into the world. That effortlessly brings the wealth and the money and the intuition and even more potent knowing. It just keeps expanding.
Mm-hmm. I think for the singular, me representing the single at this point, icon, the unbonded to other icon, what that looks like in my life is that when my internal commander commands me, I respond.
Yes.
So the way that I kind of operate is when something is coming in for me, a lot of times I'll be knocked offline. I'm like, okay, we got a girl down. She's down for 3 days. And And then I come back online, and then there's a specific command that goes with that. Here is your next thing. Do this. And then if I am not responsive to that, I am not, literally, as we say, I am not commanded. I am not operating in the feminine at that point. I'm not responding to that internal directive or command. So I am my player one in my game of this life. And internally, my internal master is my player one, and I'm player two, and I'm player one in my life. So in the bonded sense, for Jacqueline and George, they are each player one in their game, and they are each other's player two. So you're player two to his player one, and he's player two to your player one, and you're each player one in your own game.
Yes.
That's a very important distinction, because I'm not going to be bonded with someone and then assume that I am player two. I am still player one. Now they are my player two.
And that does not mean that your games are the same.
Mm-mm.
I'm player one in my game, which is I am feminine. I am the woman.
Mm-hmm.
He's player one, he's masculine and the man. So the way his player one looks is different than the way my player one looks. I just want to make that distinction, that I'm not playing player one the way that a man would, because I'm masculine.
Right.
I'm doing it as Jacqueline, feminine woman.
Yes. Very important distinction.
Very. And that then, because we're bonded, my player one complements his player one.
Yes.
And his mine.
Yes. The master icon deactivated. We talked about this earlier. When the master is deactivated, the virus of the master is that they do not know. Mm. Remember, the virus in the human and the feminine is she does not trust her body. Once she's activated and the human is activated, they trust their body. The master knows. So the activated master turns on, and they know. It shows up as money, wealth, resources are off, and they're not in the flow or in flow or self-perpetuating. We said the knower is deactivated. It's not in the knowing state. It's stale, dated, no longer valid. So even though something that they might have received as a knowing in a deactivated state is no longer going to be true in an activated state.
I got the knowing that, you know what, it's not George. It's not working. That was a knowing for me that I followed and said, okay, I'm leaving the marriage. Mm-hmm. However, that was in a stale, deactivated state, which, to go back to how the icons stack, mm-hmm. related to the human not charged first, human got charged, okay, now you've got to do the heart activation. Get the heart activation, master online, I know, easy.
And I'm not going to share it here, I'll share it in a long course and how that works. There's a fail-safe way, a 100% clear way to know if you're in a partnership, if that person is your person, your bond. I've never seen it fail. I've always seen it reveal, and I'll share that in the course. There's a 100% fail-safe way to know if that person is your person or not. Mm-hmm. You seek a surrogate master. This is perfect. Yeah. This is perfect impotent dom sub energetics.
Yes. Yes.
I do not need the man to be my master. I am my own master. And yet when a charged, activated masculine commands, I am the activated feminine response.
Yes.
And the energetic laws are flipped on their poles. You talk about turning shit on its head, right?
Yes.
It's really
Yes.
really fast. Yeah. Anything else you want to say about any of those, the deactivated?
No, that was great. That was great.
I'll talk to the activation on this one because I kind of came up with this. One of the things I had to learn to do was I had to calibrate the voice of my own master. If you've been in relationships where you have had male voices that were not loving, not care, not kind, not caring, not kind, not love, not potent, godlike in your field, even a deleterious religious experience, you have to go in and calibrate the voice of your master. And so we'll talk about how to do that in the long course. That's an absolute imperative if you do not possess the internal recognition of the frequency of your own master. And the activation is rooted in the knowing, intuition, confidence when in your mastery. So those two things are closely related and play off of each other. Jacqueline, you want to talk about the activated master icon?
Yeah, it again, the beauty of these icons is when there is activation, and especially so in the master because of what it encompasses, it becomes effortless. You're not hustling. That's what lives in the master deactivated as well, is that you're hustling. You're trying to pull it all together. You're putting all your energy in. And ultimately, if your master is not activated and you're not coming into this effortless creation and expansion of wealth, effortlessness in speaking the truth / your truth, however you relate to that, if that's not activated, you actually can burn out your human charge by overdoing the master.
Yep.
This is like, we're talking about how they build up. When you get to the master, if you've got the human charged, the master's not activated, you start to fall back down.
Right.
And the human depletes.
Right.
So this is one way. There are so many pieces we have yet to explore, but this is one way that there's sort of a crisscross of icons that can be impacted. And I would imagine as we continue expanding this, that's going to happen with all of them in some way, where one not activated will cancel out the other and take away the effortlessness in you. The master really is about you being you and bringing in all that belongs to you, all that is yours. If you bring in the sort of statement of master of your domain or master of your own castle, master of your life, when the master is activated, all of that suddenly becomes alive and available to you. When he's not activated, then you're struggling, you're working really hard, and again, you're burning out.
And this icon totally eliminates the need to find your genius.
Yes.
That's overactivation of the master icon, and it depletes the human. So the search for genius and the search for your niche and your search for that, you don't do that. That's unnecessary. Once the human is activated, the God is activated, and the master is activated, those are moot questions.
Yes. Which has been my experience very potently.
You do not have to look for it, think about it, or talk it. You will do it. And it will flow right through you. And it doesn't even have to be necessarily, I know earlier we referred to this as my genius. That was my way of saying, this is from my master. This is my potency expressed.
Yes. And I just experienced a visual of that, which is when your master is not activated, there's a conjuring up.
Yes. Yeah.
It's another place where there is illusion, although in this case, it's almost intentionally created illusion to be a distraction from the void of knowing your own mastery, carrying, holding your own mastery.
And I see distortions of expressions of the master show up in people, like overactive, domineering behavior. It's like, just really, it's just, it puts an end to that. And then all the
Yes.
search for genius and all the burnout about looking for genius, you don't even have to, it's not a thing. It just, that's overcompensation in the mastery and the impotence.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
and over projection.
over projection. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like focusing on one spectrum of light almost, and then you lose the all the colors you could be seeing because you're, in your field is only this. It's not even a thing. Okay, let's talk about the alien.
I love the alien. The alien, it's so, first of all, what the truth about the alien, you can't get to the alien until you charge the human, open the heart, and activate the master.
The alien can't see you. The alien isn't even like,
there's no light.
There's no light
beam
for the alien to connect with. It's not there.
And the energetic of the alien is where, when people are talking about their codes, it is part of their genius, the downloads, the edge of consciousness. For me, in my experience, those are all languages that I've used, knowing it's outside the realm of the ordinary, and not like the God, not a deity, not a divinity, not an eternal aspect of Eros. The alien is beyond what is known, beyond what is in existence. The God is in existence. The alien is not. It's outside of this world, our world, outside of our galaxy, beyond what you can just reach. And really, truly, as Michale said, without these other icons in place, the alien can't see you, and you don't even exist to the alien. You have no beam to which the alien can respond. So the alien is all about continually accessing, downloading new codes that are unique to your mastery. This is why your master needs to be online, and your energetic signature. Again, your compass. The alien responds to your compass and where you are on that. As we said, yeah, go ahead.
Human charge. Yeah, and your human charge. So energetic signature is your human charge as well as your compass reading. So that's,
yes.
There's a signature in both of those aspects. So it covers all three icons in that moment where, the energetic signature of your human charge, is your God activated, and is your mastery activated as well.
Yes, human charge, God heart, command of the master. Those in place, they actually are required for you to not only access your codes from the future. The alien is in the future. So they are required to not only access them, but to decode it. For people who are impotent in the alien, this is another place that there's a virus in every icon. The virus in the alien is when someone, because there are some people who can get codes. We're all formed differently. So some people get a code download. However, without the other icons online, the translation, the decoding of what has been received carries a virus. It comes through impotent.
Go back and talk about the realm of function on this one, Jacqueline, being chaos, because I think it makes more sense. The virus and the alien makes more sense when you understand that this is the realm of chaos.
Of chaos. So the alien codes, alien activation, alien impregnation, we're going to get to that, comes from the future. It does not exist in the now. It wouldn't make sense to the now. It can't be understood through the lens of the now. That then creates an environment of chaos, of feeling there's no order to this. It doesn't make sense. I don't get it. Everything is stirred up. For example, Michelle said, everything sort of blows up, not your language, Michelle, mine, but everything sort of shifts, either slows down or speeds up in her world. And her previous response was, I don't know what's going on. What do I need to charge my human? Is it my heart? Is it my master? And she would go through those. And now what she understands is the chaos that is erupting outside of how she normally functions is actually coming through as an upgrade or a download. So when the alien is activated, again, that requires the other three in line, there's going to be a sense of chaos happening. And when you know that, just as when you know in the God there's grief, when you know in the alien that it's coming from the realm of chaos, you can allow it to come through and not collapse because it doesn't make sense.
For a lot of people who are overcompensated in one area, that kind of chaos comes through as disorder. So they become hyper-focused on order. So the amount of disorder that you can allow in your field that you know and have the confidence will become ordered, transmitted, transmuted through you. It's like riding a bike. You get better and better at it. And a lot of that is housed in the basic acknowledgement of the alien. So the basic acknowledgement of the human is that the environment is impacting us. The basic acknowledgement of the God is that, what was that, Jacqueline? That there's deity.
That there is a higher deity and a divinity, and we are continually longing to connect with that.
And the basic acknowledgement in the master is that there is a need to command and be commanded. The basic acknowledgement for the alien is that we are not alone and we've never been alone. So there have always been and always are higher intelligent life forms that remain beyond our comprehension, as evidenced by alien communication, highly advanced innovation and technology, the ability to jump timelines, time travel, and drawing the future into now. So basically all the things that were so futuristic one day are becoming reality now. And that is foreign. So alien is foreign, and alien is also has to do with other beings, other intelligences, other life forms, things like that. Yes. That's the basic acknowledgement of the alien. It's something that you assume, an acknowledgement that is a frame of looking at this energetic. And there are no laws here because it comes from chaos. It's star formation, it's Big Bang, it's that kind of energetic where it was ex nihilo, something out of nothing. It was that kind of energetic of chaos that becomes crystallized and ordered like a diamond.
Like a diamond.
And so the alien icon deactivated is the absence of procreative human life force. So you'll see, so this is impotent alien.
You can sense the absence of, and I'm going to go into the next one too, which is inability to connect to the heart. You can sense a highly active, not activated, but active alien energetic. It's very challenging to see life in that being beyond what appears incredibly disconnected, incredibly sterile, focused only on one thing. And it's not a truth speaking like the master. It's an absence of humanity.
So one of the things that I'm able to do is with people, like the brain and the heart are two very mitochondria rich areas of the human. They're full of power potential, and they have to be. They're two most active and um, we can't live without them. So they're imperative that we have them. And the degree to which they are powered up and producing their own power affects our whole life. So whenever you put a human in front of me, I'm able to kind of ascertain the level of life potential and power potential in that human, or their life force potential is what that kind of means. And there are many different things about the way the human lives that impact that potential. For example, one of the first places I go is sleep. People are like, well, I don't need any sleep. I'm like, yeah, well, yeah, you do. And I can tell you how that's impacting you, and the lack of quality and things like that about your sleep, and how it's affecting your heart and your brain. And now we have all this plethora of white paper and research devoted to how lack of quality sleep impacts the heart and the brain. It's now proven. So the deactivated alien will bypass that and say, well, I don't need sleep, and I don't need to tend to that, or I don't need love, or I don't need human contact. And they will show up in this deactivated or impotent alien type expression. And I can basically see it in them. There's a sterility to them. There's a sterile feeling to their work. It lacks, it lacks life.
Warmth. There's no warmth. There's no
naturalness to it. It's a devoid of kind of feeling. It's where it's like what we're doing right now with all of the sterilizing techniques that we're using and disinfecting techniques that we're doing right now in restaurants and public and all that, where we're getting rid of bacteria and viruses and all of these things. We're becoming very sterile. And even in the way that, because of the pandemic regulations, how we're interacting or not interacting with each other, it's creating this deactivated alien kind of state. And there's a continual seeking to probe and violate. And so we see this in deactivated and impotent alien, and it's also visible in deactivated and impotent master. So sometimes master deactivated will morph into deactivated alien, and there's always this going in and projecting and probing and going to spaces that there's really no consent for. And so it's that fantasy of being abducted and probed on a sterile alien spaceship that is a deactivated alien form, so to speak.
And in that deactivated alien continually seeking to probe and violate, this is even energetic, coming into your space, treating it as though, even though there's no invitation, and at any time that energy can probe and penetrate and disrupt your space at will. There's no sensing of time space between the two. There's no sensing of personal boundary space. This belongs to me. There's no consent by the one being probed. There's no invitation. And yet that deactivated alien, there was a man I knew who was highly psychic, had no issue approaching especially women and telling them what he could sense in their field. That is an impotent alien who has a genius and a gift that is beyond the normal, and used that because he had not the other three in line, used that gift to probe and violate someone else's space. And because it seemed like genius, most people who also are not charged and carrying the full activation would receive that and think it was incredible.
Right.
And then down the road a little bit, suddenly feel like they have been violated. That's part of the alien deactivated state as well.
So one of my favorite examples is the movie Contact. So if you watch the movie Contact, it's Carl Sagan based film with Jodie Foster. And Jodie, the character she plays, Jill, I can't think of her name. She created SETI. I can't think of her name. Yeah, anyway, she created SETI, which is about locating intelligent life in the universe. And the story is that Jill's father dies when she was very young, and that was created a heart wound for her, and she didn't believe in God. And so what happens is that she's sending what's the radio telescope that just closed in Puerto Rico, the big radio telescope, Eros, I'm gonna have to look it up. Arecibo. I'm gonna make sure I'm getting.
I got nothing.
I know, it's okay. I'm going off on my nerd. Oh, Arecibo Observatory. I got it right.
You had it.
Arecibo, Puerto Rico. They recently deactivated it because it broke or something. And so she's at Arecibo, and then she goes to New Mexico, and she's sending signals, and she gets Vega, a signal from Vega, and Vega downloads the plans for a vehicle that she's going to travel. Eventually, she, through the whole process, the movie's really great, travels there and through a wormhole, and it's only 18 seconds, but she thinks she's gone this ungodly amount of time. It's a time bend, right? And so when she lands there, she's on a beach that looks like Hawaii. So these aliens are communicating to her in a way that her human understands. She's with her dad. They're dressed as her dad on a beach. So she's got this loving human contact, and she's in nature. And I'm like, how perfect is that? It's activated alien speaking to her human in a way that all the things come together, and she's getting this information. If you've not watched the movie Contact, you really need to watch the movie Contact.
I haven't for a long time. I need to.
It's such a great movie. It demonstrates this perfectly. She's so excellent in her mind, and she doesn't believe in God. And when she gets back, she goes before Congress, and then afterwards, after that, she professes her belief in God, and the God comes back in, and then everything's there. So it's really amazing. That whole concept is that's an example of alien coming to us in the human, with the love and the God acknowledgement all right there. It's really fantastic. So the activation occurs once the other three icons are activated and charged, and that was the example of this. She got alien in the movie, and then when her God came on, the unspoken in the story is then she got love. She got her human bond. And it's like the whole freaking thing right there. It's kind of amazing.
I love that.
Yeah. And so and so this occurs once the other three are activated and charged. We're asking for it. We're asking for the alien activation. We're giving consent for receipt of alien penetration and activation of seed, or basically codes that are coming to us.
Yes.
And the alien icon activated, it's an impregnation. It's a creation from the future, and it's always creating. So the future is always creating. It's not finished. The story is still being written. So there's always going to be information that can be sent to us in the now from the future to pave the way and prepare the way for what's coming, and how to live and how to navigate and all of those things. And I've, in my other work in integrative craniofacial growth and development, that's what I've done with that, is I've said, okay, in the future, what do we need? Let me bring that in now and create this paradigm or this way so that the humans can go forward in throughout all of this all of this, what could potentially be detrimental exposure to the speed at which the environment is changing. We become a vessel, a vehicle for codes once activated. So that's what I just said is you get information. It's one of my mentors calls it, we'll ask each other, do you have information? And she's such an alien. And she's like, I have information, or she'll dispense it. I have information about this. And it's a code and information that's come through that she said, I have information about this. This is what I suggest that you do. And that is information coming in from the future that's been transmitted or permutated or mutated through her into her masterful voice speaking, and then people listen to that, and it's done with the God love and in the human form, so it's all present there. And then the receipt of information from future and alien form, and so we're asking for that. I love living on Maui because there's a power center on Haleakala. Haleakala means house of the sun. It's the sun where the sun god lives. And there are sightings here all the time of other life forms that aren't given. And there's even someone that lives up there that looks for incomings. You know, like, that's your job. That's your job. You look for incomings. Oh, Maui, how cool is that? I'm just like, that's so awesome. The things that happen there, and the telescopes that will be built in the future to look for this life, like Jill did in the movie Contact. So amazing.
It's fascinating too, as you talked. First of all, your voice and energy changed and softened. And secondly, as I witnessed that and listened to you telling the story and speaking about the alien, I can see that alien coming in once the other three are activated and online, that alien not only brings the new codes from the future, but has an impact on the expression and the charge of the other three icons.
Mm-hmm.
It's not on its own. And I didn't see that until you just spoke. And I literally watched it coming through and could see it on the screen, hear it in your voice and in what you were sharing. That alien alchemizes even more the first three icons.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, it's totally fascinating. And I'm really glad actually maybe I went in that direction, is because that's what it's like. And the other thing too is that as you get that, it gives you power's not the word, permission's not the word, license, I don't know, Jacqueline, maybe when it drops in for you, but there's this quality of the master that once that alien begins to activate, you say it. You just say it.
It's almost like a license. It gives you license, a liberation.
It's not just license, it's more than impulse. You're duty bound almost to.
Like a mandate.
It's a mandate.
Mm-hmm.
It's a total mandate that you speak, that you say it, that you live it. It's that potent. Yeah.
And what I just, as you were speaking now too, what I and we who will be watching this just witnessed in you, how you softened into the energetic of the alien presence and impregnation. That is how you know it is a potent alien versus impotent, because those alien codes aren't going to come through and become spewed all over everybody. There's a sweetness that accompanies the mandate.
Yeah.
It's not dominating. It's not telling. It's not commanding. This isn't the master. The alien actually carries a tone of a lover energetic in a very subtle way. There's a sweetness to it.
Yeah, it's not a lording over. This is a gift.
Yes.
It's the throwing of the diamonds. I grew up on the Gulf Coast, and Mardi Gras was the thing. I feel sometimes I feel like in the tradition they're not going to do it this. They call it Yardi Gras this year. The floats are all covered and the people's faces are covered and they almost look like aliens, and they're wearing these very classic Mardi Gras outfits, and they're throwing things from the floats that people are catching. And sometimes that's almost what's coming to mind now, is it's this throwing of diamonds. And yet it's not pearls to swine either. It's the releasing of the diamonds to those receptacles who are ready to receive them and to catch them, and to assimilate them and bring them in.
Yes. Yes. And I would shift from saying it's kind of like a lover to a benevolent entity that is bringing a gift and carries it.
Mm-hmm.
Why activated is cold and sterile. This energy is actually very warm and has a caring quality to it and a benevolence that wants to give.
Very good. Very good distinction. So you want to close this out, Jacqueline?
Yeah, well, yes, yes. So, really, everything Michelle and I have gone through is a sampling. We've really just dipped your toes into what these bonding surfaces that we are calling icons understand and have received the information as icons and the iconic bond. And again, as Michelle spoke about, that bond is created through attraction, pressure, and tension. And to further break that down, in forming the bond, the attraction isn't just, oh, I'm very attracted to them. There's a chemical, a physical, and energetic recognition that there is bonding potential here. And going back to how we began, the truth is your bond is already in existence. It's just not yet activated. That bond becomes active in responsiveness to the physics. Michelle, you may have more to say about this. Elements that are playing into the attraction, which bring you as the knower, brings that knowing in for the environment that everything I said is about. This is all the icons coming into play to create the imposing. Is the foundation is chemical, energetic, psychic, sexual, physical, spiritual. Charging, activating, opening the icons brings the clarity that is necessary for you to come into the iconic bond. And this is what we have put together, what has first of all been given to us, and then we have formed into material and brought to you to give you some understanding and appreciation, as well as acknowledgement of what the iconic bond is, your desire for it, and how you can begin to prepare yourself to receive it.
Beautiful. I love it. So the call to action here would be to participate in the iconic bond full course and one-to-one work, where you go through the modules, each module, where you participate in the iconic bond small group that we will run. And then as a part of your package, you will be put on the grid at some point. Once we feel like you're ready to be put on the grid, there's preparation for that. And you're not put on the grid until you're fully prepared in and activated in the three, or you've at least begun the process of the three activations. And for the human, it can take a minute depending on how discharged you are. So we calibrate that, we look at that, and then you're put on the grid. And then we bring our excellence and expertise to that, give you information, let you make those changes, do the things, and then come back if there needs to be a follow-up to that, so that you can begin to experience that potency. As Jacqueline mentioned, we are an ongoing receiver of this information and fleshing out of these codes and bonding information. And so as we walk this process as well and bring others into it, things get sharper, more clear, even though I feel like they're freaking sharp right now. Freaking clear right now.
It just keep coming though.
The nuances just keep coming in, and yet at the same time, instead of making it more complex, it actually makes it much more clear and much more simple. So yeah, so that's what you have to look forward to. That would be your call to action, would be to do the iconic bond trademark process with us. And then if you have specific questions, you can email us and message us, and we can answer those questions. This is an offering to you to give you a nice, healthy overview of the elements of the process, and then dive into it in the iconic bond trademark process.
Yes.
Okay, and with that, we will leave you and bid you farewell, and see you on the inside.